As a new millennium dawned, the world wondered what would become of Vince McMahon and his troupe of muscled-up freaks known as the World Wrestling Federation, soon to become World Wrestling Entertainment. The 2000s were yet another decade of radical change in the company. It began the period in the Attitude Era, segued into ruthless aggression, and ended up with both feet firmly in PG land. But where did it all go right, and where did it all go wrong? I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is WWE in the 2000s, every year ranked from worst to best. Join us. Number 10, 2007. 2007 will live on in infamy due to the actions of Chris Benoit between the 22nd and 24th of June of that year. That tragedy cast a long shadow over the rest of the year and beyond, as the industry and the wider world tried to come to terms with what had happened. Even without this horrible event, 2007 would have still been a bad year for WWE. Both Rob Van Dam and Bobby Lashley parted ways with the company, meaning that they lost a legend and a future star in one go. Vince McMahon won the ECW Championship, condemning the third brand to joke status. And then there was the string of busts made against Signature Pharmacy, which was found to be illegally distributing performance-enhancing drugs to several major WWE stars. The likes of Randy Orton, Booker T, Edge, and William Regal were all suspended for their involvement. WrestleMania 23 broke pay-per-view buy rate records that year thanks to the involvement of Donald Trump, and the likes of Santino Marella, Cody Rhodes, and Kofi Kingston all made their debuts. However, none of this brought much light to what was a very dark year for the promotion. Now, on to happier things. Number 9, 2003. When discussing the greatest WWE pay-per-views of all time, there is usually only one answer. Don't worry, we'll get to it later. However, the hipsters among you may decide to plumb for a show that went down in 2003. Featuring mammoth fights between Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle, Stone Cold and The Rock, Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan, and Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho, WrestleMania 19 is an absolute blast from start to finish, even if it did almost tarnish Booker T as a main eventer forever. Unfortunately for the big dub, this would be the highlight of an otherwise rather dull year. Triple H was in full Reign of Terror mode on Raw, which made half of WWE's output a drag to watch. Sure, Goldberg debuted for the brand, but we all know how that went down. Whilst the wrestling over on SmackDown was solid, there weren't many major headline-grabbing moments to speak of. Even with the reintroduction of the United States Championship and the establishment of Tribute to the Troops, 2003 was just a bit meh. Number 8, 2009. The decade's final year looked very different to the one that started it. WWE was in full family-friendly mode at this point in time, and a lot of the audience that were watching in the year 2000 had switched off for good. Still, that doesn't mean there weren't highlights. Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker had what many consider to be WrestleMania's finest match at the 25th anniversary, wink wink, of the show of shows. It's just a shame that most of the rest of the night was a little bit on the stinky side. Throughout the summer, CM Punk and Jeff Hardy had an excellent feud over the World Heavyweight Championship, with the charismatic Enigma on his way out of the door and about to be busted for drugs before showing up in TNA. And you know what? That about says it all. Most of the good bits of 2009 had asterisks next to them. Sheamus and Drew McIntyre debuted, but it would take many years for them to reach their full potential. WWE unified its tag team championships, which basically signaled the end of the division as a serious part of the programming. Oh, and this was the year that Raw introduced the concept of guest hosts. Bob Barker aside, there is simply no upside at all to that decision. Number 7, 2006. Whilst WWE's roster was bolstered in 2006 by the arrivals of Umaga, CM Punk and The Miz, it was also hit by several money-drawing names bidding their farewells. Hulk Hogan wrestled his last match for the promotion against Randy Orton, of all people, at that year's SummerSlam. The women's division was struck by the double bombshell of Trish Stratus bowing out at Unforgiven, and then Lita doing the same at Survivor Series. Only one of them had their pants sold off by Crime Time on her way out, though. Perhaps the most shocking departure was that of Kurt Angle, who was just 38 years old when he jumped ship to TNA amid spiraling personal issues. Angle still had many good years ahead of him, even if his body was held together by chewing gum and hopes at this point. Elsewhere, an injury to Batista derailed his record-setting World Heavyweight Championship reign, and ECW was launched as a third brand, and then quickly forgotten about. This, of course, led to the December to Dismember pay-per-view, widely regarded as one of the worst in WWE history. On the plus side, the WWE Music Group was founded, so that's something. Number 6, 2008. Dolph Ziggler made his first non-cheerleading appearance in WWE this year, as did a young Canadian named Natalya, but the real biggest debut of 2008 was the concept of parental guidance. On July 22nd, 2008, WWE officially switched to a more family-oriented model. Whilst going PG wasn't inherently a bad thing, banning chair shots to the head might just be one of the best things the company ever did, the move has become a byword for the perceived drop in quality that the product has undergone in the decade and a half since. PG meant that things got a lot less serious, that wrestlers who were involved in a blood feud had to mind their language and be polite. How does that work? Not very well. Thankfully, Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels were on hand to show that you could create compelling action without a TV-14 rating. Though their epic feud began before the transition, it culminated in a stunning ladder match at October's No Mercy. Combine this with an excellent WrestleMania 24 and Jeff Hardy's rise to the main event, and 2008 was pretty decent in ring. WWE also went HD in 2008, forcing most of the roster to sign up for the David Dickinson School of Tanning. Number 5, 2004. WrestleMania 20 wasn't just where it all began again, it was also just a great night to be a wrestling fan. John Cena won his first championship, The Undertaker returned to the dead man persona, and that closing image of the two world champions embracing was wonderful at the time, even if it is tinged with tragedy now. Eddie Guerrero winning the WWE title a month earlier was also a big deal, as was the revival of the WWE Hall of Fame following an 8-year absence. Also, WWE launched its Classics on Demand service, a subscription-based video-on-demand service that served as a precursor to the WWE Network. That said, of course, 2004 had its troughs alongside the peaks. Brock Lesnar and Goldberg both left, but not before stinking up Mania 20 on their way out. The Great American Bash from this year will go down as one of the worst pay-per-views in company history. I mean, they drowned Paul Bearer in cement. Also, 2004 saw the WWE debut of Muhammad Hassan, an Italian-American man playing an Arab-American character who was angry at the United States following the treatment of his people in the wake of 9/11, which would lead to great controversy in Number 4, 2005. Since we were just talking about him, let's bring up the moment Muhammad Hassan summoned a bunch of terrorists on SmackDown and then set them on The Undertaker. This already uncomfortable scene was made 10 times worse since it aired on the same day as the 7/7 bombings in London. As a result, Hassan was powerbombed into oblivion by Taker and was never heard of or spoken about again. Now let's talk about all the good stuff that happened in 2005, shall we? John Cena and Batista won their first world titles at Mania 21, ushering in a new era for the main event. Money in the Bank was also introduced at that same show, which was a banger from top to bottom. And ECW made its triumphant return with the first One Night Stand, a wonderfully nostalgic celebration of Philadelphia's finest. Sadly, 2005 was also the year we lost Eddie Guerrero. Latino Heat passed away in November while still very much in his prime. This remains one of the most mourned deaths in all of pro wrestling, and Eddie has rightfully been remembered as an all-time legend in the wake of his passing. Number 3, 2002. The aforementioned Cena and Batista both made their main roster debuts in 2002, one as a plucky scrapper in neon shorts and the other as a giant villainous deacon. Circle of life, I guess. Also getting their call-ups this year were Randy Orton, who would become world champion within 2 years, and Brock Lesnar, who would become world champion within 5 months of his debut. Lesnar beating The Rock to become the youngest WWE champion in history took place at SummerSlam, which also saw the in-ring return of Shawn Michaels. HBK was back after 4 years away and would be world champion again come November in the brownest of brown tights. The World Heavyweight Championship was introduced, as was the Elimination Chamber, and outside of wrestling, WWE Studios was founded. Big up See No Evil. It wasn't all plain sailing for the good ship 2002 though. This was the year that Steve Austin took his ball and went home, the year of Katie Vick and HLA, the year of the plane ride from hell, and the year WWE was forced to change its name because of some goddamn pandas. Still, 2002 was pivotal in establishing the company's future, and that has to be recognized. Number 2, 2001. WrestleMania X7. What more need I say? The hardcore triple threat, Vince vs. Shane, Taker vs. Triple H, TLC 2, Austin Rock 2, the goddamn gimmick battle royal. This show is simply a masterpiece that not even China vs. Ivory could muck up. Of Of course, this wasn't the only big thing that happened in 2001. Vince McMahon finally had his hand raised in the Monday Night Wars, purchasing both WCW and ECW as those two companies folded. Whilst this seems like a good thing on paper, well, at least for Vince, let's not forget that this was what began one of the biggest missed opportunities in WWE's history, the Invasion. What began as a dream of Federation stars fighting WCW and ECW stars quickly turned into a bit of a disaster. Very few big names were available right away due to having lucrative guaranteed contracts with WCW parent company Time Warner, meaning that the whole thing felt lackluster from the get-go. Then there was all the infighting and the swerves and the rest, and the whole thing just spiraled into a big smelly mess. Still, this year was extremely historically significant, so we're willing to look past all that. Number 1, 2000. Just 1 year prior to WrestleMania X7, WWE put on WrestleMania 2000 to a very different reaction. Aside from a few matches here and there, the Triangle Ladder match and the Eurocontinental Triple Threat come to mind, this show was roundly criticised for being a thunderingly underwhelming supercard. Luckily for wrestling fans, pretty much everything else WWE did this year was first-rate. From the Street Fight at Royal Rumble to Rock Triple H at Backlash to the SummerSlam Love Triangle to the six-man Hell in a Cell, 2000's pay-per-view calendar was quite frankly embarrassingly good. The arrival of the Radicals, Trish and Lita, and ECW alumni Taz and Raven was complemented by the return of Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Texas Rattlesnake was back after major neck surgery, which added yet another huge name to the company's ridiculous call sheet. Yes, this might have been the year that Vince blew millions on the XFL, but in terms of his pro wrestling empire, you would struggle to find many sweeter years than this one. So there you have it. It was basically all downhill for WWE for the entire rest of the decade. Isn't that a happy note to end on? See ya!